Happy Sunday, everybody. It's me, Sierra London, back with my author friends, Jacki Renée and Michele Ingrid. Together, we are Women on Words. And so happy Black History Month. I don't want to forget to
Happy
say that.
Black History Month.
Yes, to be young, gifted, and black, which we all are.
Yes.
Some younger than others, Michelle. You're the young one in the group. But
That's
this
scary.
month, oh my goodness. I'm so excited for our February read. So, y'all know the third Sunday of the month, we do the Backlist Book Club. And this month, we read Tia Williams' 7 Days in June. It was Michelle's pick. I think she actually has the hardcover book there with her, right? Oh, look at that gorgeous cover.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that just makes me want to read it too.
Bought it in June of last year and we'll read it this June coming.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, it came out June 1st, 2021. So I'm going to read the back cover and then we're going to dive right in because there is a lot going on in this book. And I want you to love it as much as I did. I really do. All right, here we go. I'm just going to throw this in. Named a best romance book of 2021 by the Washington Post. 7 days to fall in love, 15 years to forget, and 7 days to get it all back again. Eva Mercy is a single mom and best-selling erotica romance writer who is feeling pressed on all sides. Shane Hall is a reclusive, enigmatic, award-winning novelist who, to everyone's surprise, shows up in New York. When Shane and Ava met unexpectedly at a literary event, sparks fly, raising not only their buried traumas, but the eyebrows of the Black literati. How many of y'all love that? Okay, Black literati.
I got a couple lines from this book I love.
I know, me too. What no one knows is that 15 years earlier, teenage Ava and Shane spent one crazy, torrid week madly in love. While they may be pretending not to know each other, they can't deny their chemistry or the fact that they've been secretly writing to each other in their books through the years. Oh, over the next 7 days, amidst a steamy Brooklyn summer. So, all you Brooklyn girls, come on. Eva and Shane reconnect, but Eva's wary of the man who broke her heart and wants him out of the city so her life can return to normal. Before Shane disappears, though, she needs a few questions answered. Oh,
Mm.
okay. All right,
Okay, I want
y'all.
to open this conversation with one
Yes.
thing before we get any further.
Okay.
Every month we come to you guys, and our goal is for you to read this book that we are talking about because we usually pick books that are like funny, engaging, romantic, fun filled, and even sometimes dark, scary. But I want to note that I'm going to put out a trigger warning for this book to start with. This book deals with a lot of really serious issues. So before we get into the conversation and before you pick up this book, I would like you to know that this book contains drug use, self harm, and talk of suicide. And if you are triggered by any of these topics, I'm going to ask you right now to put this book down. It is beautiful, but there are beautiful books out there that can feed your soul that will not ask you to take on this subject matter. So I wanted to put that and get that out of the way before we get started.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle, because I agree with you. Though this book is
Mhm,
beautifully
mhm,
written, I
mhm.
mean, oh my gosh. She writes with a lot of realism and
Tons of
she
emotion.
yes, lots of realism and emotion. And even though the prose is beautiful, we're dealing with some very real issues
Hard
here. The
issues.
other thing that I would ask of you, listeners, is hop on over to Facebook to the Women on Words page if you have questions or comments, because we want to know that you're out there. Okay, Michelle, get us started. We're ready. This your
Okay,
pick.
so I'm gonna say that right off the top, we have two amazing characters. We have Shane
Mhm.
Hall. We open learning that he is now a teacher. He has written this amazing book and he is sober for the first time in a long time. The second thing is we have this character, Eva Mercy. But before we get further, because if you
Okay.
read the book, it is page 74 before you find out that their character that we've been reading as Genevieve Mercy is actually Genevieve Mercier.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
never ever going to be able to say Genevieve again without asking, are you a Genevieve or are you a Genevieve?
Yeah. Yes, yes.
So yeah, so that is how we start. These are two dynamic characters. We meet a woman who is in a lot of pain. She has a chronic pain disorder that she is I don't want to say self-medicating. She is medically approved medicating, but this is tough. I mean, we are in her head. I felt the pain as we were reading it. And we know that she is an erotic writer with fans who do not necessarily look like her.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
she is the mother to a 12-year-old. And we know
Okay.
that she comes from a tough upbringing. So my first question before we go any further, I want to ask you how you guys digested the book. Did you read it? Did you listen? Did you tandem like I did? And secondly, what were your first impressions of these two characters and the lives that we saw at the very beginning of the book?
Okay. So I'm going to start at the beginning. So this book opens with us meeting the heroine, and she is literally at home alone, taking care of her own sexual healing, and she almost chokes on a piece of gum.
And
Okay.
she almost died.
Yes, while she's having a very fun time with her battery operated boyfriend.
Mhm.
So
God
honestly,
strikes again. That little.
so just meeting her on that first page, she sucked me in because she almost died with her piece of chewing gum.
And she's already
So
reading the
With
headline
with
of
her
what she's
child in the
gonna
house.
read.
yes, yes,
With her concern was that her daughter would walk in and her 12-year-old
your
daughter at
daughter.
that would walk in and find her. And she was like, and that would be her legacy.
Yes, 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 yes. And so immediately I'm thinking of like this mother-daughter relationship, right?
Mhm.
Whoa.
Like you're not thinking about because you know how your mom, at least I'm from the South, so my mom always says, like, leave home with clean underwear as if that was ever an option. And right, so you're like, okay, don't want to be in an accident, but she's in her home and she don't think about the ambulance picking her up. She thinks about her daughter. So
Yes.
Right.
immediately I got a feel for this relationship that
Mhm.
she has with her daughter. And I love that because as the story develops, you see this thread of mothers and daughters and the legacy between mothers and daughters play
Mhm.
out.
Serious
Eh,
relationships between mothers and
yes.
daughters. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
yeah. So immediately, like, I liked Ava. I liked her. I keep saying Ava, don't I? I like,
Eva Genevieve.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I liked her right away. My first impression of her was great. Then finding out that she was an author with a certain amount of writer's block,
Mhm.
I could relate to her.
Mhm.
So for all of you all out there that's looking for a kindred spirit, like you're a mom, you're trying to make ends meet, you're trying to meet your own needs, do your self-care
Mhm.
in multiple ways because self-care comes in many
Different way.
flavors, right?
Right.
you
Right.
you spoke about her medical condition, and I
Mhm.
love the way the author wove that in without it being overwhelming.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes,
I don't know. It was a
like,
little overwhelming at the beginning when she first
well,
describes it at that luncheon. I was like,
yeah, like
oh,
this is a character that has a chronic pain experience. And I think
yes.
a lot of women can relate to this. Just
Hmm.
pushing through life. You
Mhm.
have this, this chronic condition that you can't shake, but guess what? You can't
Gotta
slow
live.
down. You
Hmm.
Right.
still have to be on your hustle. You still got to work. You still got to
Yeah.
take care of your
Yeah.
kids, and you still got to take care of yourself. And
Hmm.
so I love that our heroine is so real. I'll
Mhm.
say that. So I'll turn it over to you, Jackie.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Hmm.
I listened to the story, and I listened to it more than once. As a matter of fact, when I woke up this morning, I hit that play button. I don't know. I can't get enough of it. But like Sierra, right away, I connected with Ava, um, from the beginning. I laughed, and then I hit pause and I looked up the quarterback because I wanted to see. I wanted to see for myself. Okay,
That's the battery
yes,
operated boyfriend, y'all. His name
exactly.
was the quarterback.
And then
The image of that alone is like, stay away from that. None of this sounds like a good idea.
I had to see. I'm a single mother, but I I understood her worry, as a single mom, um, her daughter walking in and, finding her that way. I was like, yeah, girl, I feel you. I understand. I've been in your shoes.
Mhm.
So, and then to have it transition to her meeting, and the way that she described the club that, this meeting took place, and how, although uh, she wasn't technically into what it is that she writes, that style of sexual pleasure, she herself was
Telling lies, she's telling lies.
she herself was handcuffed to a chair and being, hand fed these these snickerdoodles. And just, her having to play this role.
Right.
There's like, with all of us authors, there's our author persona, and then there's our
Us.
outside
Yeah.
persona. So
Yeah.
I found that, Ava was really, really relatable.
Hmm.
Actually,
Hmm.
all the characters were. I could relate to even Audrey, her daughter. Every now and again, certain things that they said, or
I
certain
don't know. I don't
views
think I
that
can
they
relate to
had.
Khalil.
Yeah.
Oh well, no, not Khalil. No, not
Yes.
Khalil.
Yes.
But Belinda. Oh yeah. See, I could hang out with Belinda.
I can hang
I
out with
know
her
I'm getting
friends
kind
too.
of
And Cece
ahead of it.
is a
Oh, see,
Cece that's
everybody has a CC
power
in their
player.
life.
She a
Yes,
power
everybody
player.
has a CC in their life. Somebody who's going to push you, whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
needs a CC in their life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
would
So,
say that too. The other way I could relate is, so you see, so she's an author, y'all, and she's 32 when the book opens, but her
Hmm.
first book actually came out when she's 19, and
Yeah.
she's still
That's
in the game.
heavy.
So you
mhm.
know
Yes.
she has real talent,
She on
right?
she's on book 15 of her series.
They're
Yes,
waiting for book
Crazy.
15.
yes.
Yeah.
They're
And
waiting
she
for book
only
15.
has one series. She has one
Mhm.
series, and it's been paying her bills in Brooklyn.
And
So, for
sending
those
her
of us
child to
in the
private
writing
school.
hustle, like, we know she's a success, right?
Hmm.
Mhm.
We know
That's
she's a,
huge. That is huge.
yes, yeah, we know she's a success.
Yeah.
But so after she has this setback with the quarterback and almost died with the piece of gum, you see her at an author reader event. And so, like Jackie was saying, I can totally relate to, like, her ordinary world is really not her life. Like
Mhm.
the way her readers see her, like
Mhm.
she's in this, she writes these sexually paranormal books
With a
with
witch and a
this,
vampire.
with a witch and a vampire named Sebastian with bronze eyes, and a
Mhm.
witch named Gia with her own little hat and her broom, which I love. And she has super fans that show up with their hat on, y'all. They got their witch hat
Mhm.
on. Her Gia's color is purple, so they got on their power color. And she's at this event, and like Jackie said, she's handcuffed. She's, they feeding the snickerdoodle. She's in pain.
Mhm.
She's in
Oh
pain,
wow.
and she's trying to be this author persona that her readers expect, but who she is keeps breaking through. And
Exactly.
yes, and there's no escape
Mm-mm.
from
Mhm.
that, as
No.
hard as she tries. And there's a part of her that isn't being fed by this. And I think this is so important when the hero comes on the scene, because he asks her, is she
Mhm.
happy?
Ooh,
Mhm.
that is such a loaded,
Yes.
loaded, loaded question. But can we talk about how they run into each
Yeah,
other?
let's talk about that. Let's bring the hero on the
So
scene.
but before we even go there, let's talk about the fact that this book is categorized as fiction. It's been voted as a romance. It could be categorized as literary romance. Um, it could be categorized as, I think I called it literary romance, literary women's fiction, and literary fiction. And I am curious about where you guys would have categorized this book.
Ooh.
Oh, I think we got to talk about it more. But okay, I'll let Jackie
Okay, that's
tackle
fair.
this
We can
one.
come. We can zero back to that. But
Okay.
okay, let's bring the hero into the story. I thought that the
Yes.
scene that brought them together in the present tense
Hmm.
was so good. I mean, I got tags all over this book.
Yes,
This book has
yeah.
turned me into the one thing I said I would never be. It has turned me into a book darter, where I never thought I'd be that person who wanted to highlight their book and needed two copies because you were so busy highlighting one that you need a perfect copy and the copy where you highlight lines.
Guilty.
Um, yes, this book, I told Sierra that this book, I've never wanted or thought about getting a master's in creative writing because I'm like, I don't have the time and it won't serve my day-to-day job, but I want one, and this book has made me want one. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
would say that too.
yeah. So
So we so so we learn a lot. At first, it's not obvious, like Michelle said, that Genevieve is also Eva Mercy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we learn a little bit about Genevieve. Y'all, I'm sitting in the sunroom and a squirrel just went by like he was joining a book club. Scared me so bad. Okay, let me focus. Okay, I'm like, what is that? Uh, um, but we learn about a little bit about her upbringing, which becomes really significant when the hero comes on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So she grew up in a single parent household with a very eccentric mother, who we learn is Lisette. And Lisette is a very beautiful woman who is used to almost being like a paramour to a
such a
variety of
nice way
gentlemen.
of
Mm-hmm.
saying it. Such a
Mm-hmm.
nice way. It sounds so
To
cultured when you say it.
Yes,
No.
well, because that's the way Lizette thinks of herself, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
she's, she provides a certain amount, a service to initially men of wealth when she's very young. And so her and her daughter move around a lot depending on her mother's gentleman friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so they move schools and communities and cities and towns. And so,
And
um,
homes.
and
Mm-hmm.
homes. And by the time our character is a teenager, the luscious, beautiful mansion like places they're living, that is not it.
They are
Okay.
gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
her mom is still a beautiful woman, but she's a woman with a certain amount of experience, and it shows.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so she attracts um
Mm-hmm.
very predatory men, and they not only prey on her mother, they attempt to prey on her
I had a hard time with Lizette. I'm gonna just
as
put it out
well.
there. I had a
Yeah.
very difficult
Yes.
time reading her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had to share that because it's so central to why our heroine is attracted to
Hmm.
Shane when
Mm-hmm.
Shane comes on the scene. So our hero comes on the scene, and at first we meet him as an adult,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Hmm.
he's an
Mm-hmm.
English teacher. We know that he writes literary fiction, and he's only written 4 books about one heroine
Mm-hmm.
named Eight.
8. I love
Name
that. I
Eight.
loved that. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
4 books, and guess what? This brother don't have to work no more. Like he
No.
he got that kind of
Dang.
Well, as
That's
a
all
matter
I
of
pull.
fact,
got.
okay. Well,
Dang.
let's take it back a little bit because yes, he's an English teacher, but he only teaches one semester.
That's right.
One semester.
Yeah,
That's
he
it.
make it
That's
bank.
all. That is all he commits to is one semester.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
all he needs to do to get the money flowing into the schools that he is teaching, where
Mm-hmm.
he's teaching.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
So
he's very well known.
yes. Oh my
Yes,
gosh. And
Like
when they
on
very
the
well
street,
known. On the
recognizable,
street,
known.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
yes,
very well known
exactly.
for the with just 4 books.
Yes, with
Whereas
just
our
four
our
books.
our, our poor little Ava she's book what 14, and she's not as well known in the what did they call it, the literary,
Black literati
The
or
black
yeah,
the
the black
literati.
literati, yes.
yeah.
She's
Yes.
not as well, but the minute he steps into the room,
In a
Whew.
chapter called Fun Black Shit.
Yes. Oh my
The
goodness.
chapter names
So
are off the chain.
they were. So you meet Shane, and you know that he likes working with troubled children
mm-hmm,
that
Yeah.
were like him,
Mhm.
particularly boys. And
mm-hmm,
they have his cell phone number, and they can call him at any time. And you were like, oh my gosh, I love
He's
him
trying to save the
already.
world.
mm-hmm. He has
Yeah.
Yes.
such a big heart. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
he
He's
does.
trying to
He
save
has
the
Yes.
world.
a huge heart. And then
Mm-hmm.
you find out that Cece, their agent, right? And they're invited to the same, well, they're invited to a literary event. Nobody expects Shane to show up because he's just that enigmatic. He doesn't have to show up. He
Mm-mm.
can stand
Mhm.
you up, and that alone will elevate your status,
Mm-hmm.
right? That he stood you up. And
Mm-hmm.
so Ava's on the stage with her literary, black literati counterparts.
That she doesn't really feel like she's sure she belongs there.
That's true.
That
Exactly.
is very clear. She's not sure
Exactly.
she belongs there.
And I like that. I like that she showed us that vulnerability, like although yes, you have these 14 published books that are paying your mortgage and paying your
Mhm.
child's private school tuition, you still
Yes.
feel like you are not as good as those that you're on the stage with. So
Right.
I
Mhm.
could relate to her, in that respect. I'm sorry, I can't.
I
I
was
can't.
mad with her. I am not going to lie. So, as a published author, if I could write one book a year and put my kid through private school and afford my place
In New
in
York.
Brooklyn, I'm like, girl, if you don't hush your mouth and go
Well,
write that
no,
one
I
book.
understood what she was
But
talking
I
about. She was
get what
talking
she's
about them
saying, but
being
one
like
book a year.
they were talking about being like major voices in the
Mhm.
movement,
Mhm.
in a lot of movements in elevating Black life,
Mhm.
in
Exactly.
talking about issues. And I mean, she even makes the comment that she is not, she's like light on that. Like she's not really one of them. She
Mhm.
doesn't have
Yeah.
the I mean,
She said she what was her woke comment, Michelle?
she's woke light or something like that.
Yeah,
I can't
I'm
remember
woke
exactly
light.
what she said, but she was
Like
like, these
not
are
fully
real,
woke.
they're really woke, but I'm not like really woke. And I thought that was
Exactly.
telling. And then I mean, in that same setting, she introduces all the different versions of Black literati and the way in which they address Black issues. And I have
Mhm.
to say, I mean, Shane is handsome and attractive
He's
and
gorgeous.
loving and giving. And this is a man who has had a tough life, who wants to save the children he meets. And then we have the counterpoint on the panel that our character is sitting in with
Khalil.
Khalil. And Khalil I was like, I wanted to know, like, there was a part of me that wanted to pick up the phone and call my friends in New York and say, who is Khalil? Tell me which one of these people that we know of that is always talking about issues in Black America on TV, on news, in their books. Tell me who it is. And I kind of figured out who it is. I think for myself, I think I know who it could be in
Mhm.
my own mind. I'm not saying that
Mhm.
she put this character on someone, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, I now see, I think that is this person.
Right,
Mhm.
because if I remember Khalil, he was also the character who was living off a non-black woman with his argyle
Like some
on.
like Norwegian billionaire woman who pays for his clothes. And I'm
Yes,
like, huh,
And everything
okay.
was about the
But
black male voice.
oh my
yes.
gosh, yes. I
Mhm.
think I tagged some of the stuff he was saying because I was just kind of like, I got nothing. I
But
Yes.
guess it
you
Khalil.
knew he was intimidated by Shane because the first thing out of his mouth was he invited to be on this panel?
Yes.
I'm like, okay, you
Yes.
can't share the stage with another black man, but
Right.
here you are talking about the plight of the black man.
Pro-black everything.
What is
But
it
you
he
can't
said?
share the
I
stage.
rebuke comic culture, spat Khalil, even Black Panther. The real hero is Eric Killmonger, but of course, Hollywood strategically emasculates the divine Asiatic black man to appease Eurocentric audiences, says the guy living with a European woman. I
Yeah.
was like, this is so crazy. First of all,
Yes.
her writing is so sharp. It is like needlepoint sharp.
Yes.
I mean, and this is even before we're getting all into this relationship
Yes.
with these two people. She has created this world around them that you're like, whoa, we've seen this world. And especially in the last couple of years, we've seen all of the members of this version of Black
Yes.
literati played out. And it
Mhm.
makes such an amazing backdrop for these two people who have like really dark pasts and are writing really dark books that are kind of like telling the tale of the state of Black writing, the state of Black life.
Yes.
I mean, she
Mhm.
addresses so many issues. I started to make a list and I was just like, oh my gosh, there's like
I
a
had to
lot of
stop.
issues addressed in this book.
Yes, I had
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
stop. So I'm going to delve into our heroine's response when she sees the hero in the back of the room, and then her agent is crazy enough to invite her 7 days in June lover up on the stage. And she
He
says out loud,
came back.
he
Mhm.
came back. She says it out loud, y'all, in
Yes.
an audience full of
Of
people
people.
and reporters and fans.
And then
And
she drops her mic.
yes, she
Drop.
drops her mic, she drops her lip. I mean, everything just, oh my God, there is shame. And it's so obvious to the audience that these two are connected. And I was like, oh my God, I was listening to the book with Mr. Awesome. We listened to it too, Jackie. And he was
Mhm.
like, oh, I like this guy.
Oh, when Shane was first introduced and he was talking to Tyree, um,
The student.
the student, one of his students, because his thing was you can't be in somebody's life and not say goodbye. To me,
That was so strong.
that was so important,
Yeah.
not just to that student, but to why he went to New York,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
And I don't want to give away,
It's
the
so
whole
hard.
story, but
It
yes,
is so
but it was
hard.
so important. And the first time I listened to it, I heard it, but it didn't connect for me. So on my second go round of listening to it, I paused and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Tia told us right away who he is as a man,
As a
even
man.
even in his teen years,
Mhm. Mhm.
how important it was for him,
Yeah.
just that one gesture. But
Yeah.
I mean, for me, and like I said, it took the second listening for me to get it, to
Yeah.
really, really get it, how
Mhm.
important that one thought was. And it wasn't even something he said out loud. It was his inner dialogue, his
Yeah.
narrative. And
Mhm.
yeah, so when I was able to connect that to Shane, I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love him, and I love him for our heroine. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
did too. And in that moment, when she sees him and he comes up on the stage, y'all, they're so enamored with each other. Neither one of them can speak.
I think she starts to stutter.
Yes, like
Mhm.
neither one of them. But it goes back to something that our heroine says, and she says, in New York, you are who you say
Say
you are.
you
Mhm.
are.
Okay, so she's reinvented herself, and I want to delve into that a little bit because
Yeah.
both these characters, the theme of reinvention it permeates this book from
Mhm.
Lizette, her mother, to our heroine, to our hero. So she's reinvented herself. She's no longer
Mhm.
Genevieve, right?
No.
She's Ava Mercy. And then here comes Genevieve's lover. And guess what? Ava want him too.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you do when this world that you have built, that's your safety net, that has become your safe haven, your solid rock, and then the very person who shakes everything in you walks up on stage? Like, yeah,
She knew her world was about to collide. Her two worlds were about to collide because you saw that even in her daughter's perception of her grandmother. You
Oh,
know,
the story she
Ava
told.
just reinvented Lizette, but in for the purpose of Audrey, her daughter.
Hmm.
mm-hmm,
Um, even even Ava's past life
mm-hmm.
was reinvented, but nobody knew. Nobody knew the real story. Now,
Yeah.
Cece, the friend, knew of her illness, but
Right.
Cece, the best friend who her daughter called Auntie Cece, did not know of
Her
her
Yeah.
life.
past. Yeah,
Right.
her
Yeah.
life. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
she kept that hidden. So now here comes Shane, her past coming into her present, and her worlds are about to collide. But the
Oh,
one
Yes.
thing I did notice,
uh-huh.
one thing I did notice, her illness did not take center stage when
No.
Mm-mm.
he showed
Turned
up.
off a little bit.
No,
Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
no,
And
it did
even
not.
when
Not.
it did, he noticed. He
Hmm.
noticed her
Hmm.
snapping the rubber band,
Yep.
against her
Yes.
wrist. Yes, yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
he knew things about her that other people just simply did not.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So setting the stage again, you have these two people who come from these very different lives, except for the fact that they're part of Black literati. There is a writer event where they're talking about social issues and Black writers, and they show up. And she's on the panel because somebody, you know, didn't make it, and she doesn't even feel like she should be there. So she's already nervous. She's in a tight ass dress that she could barely breathe in because Cece insisted, or was it Belinda, insisted that she dress a certain way. She is friends with not only Black literati, but she is friends with Black power brokers in New York. Okay.
Yes.
This
Mhm.
is major.
Mm-hmm.
We take that. She's already in sort of an uncomfortable space. And this man who we just know has shaken up her life, but we don't know how,
Mm-hmm.
has walked into the room and she is kind of thrown off of her game. And she got crazy Khalil throwing daggers from the side, but
Mhm.
everybody else, including the audience, are standing up because, oh my God, is that really him? Like, this is the equivalent of, is that really him walking in? This is what people are saying out loud.
Mhm.
Yes.
That is
Mhm.
like a level of magnetism that you can't even address. And so then the most amazing thing that happens is their banter is crazy hot,
Oh
number
Yes.
my
one.
goodness.
And
Yes.
there's that moment when she is pissed because she says she checks him in front of this entire audience for creating a character that is built on the strain and the stress that she had as a young lady. And she tells this man, you need to stop writing about me. And he takes her on, looks her in the eye, and says, you
You
first.
first.
And
First.
I was like,
Mhm.
I was
I knew we
yes.
knew this. This is on the back
Yes.
cover copy, but the
Mhm.
manner in which
She revealed it.
she reveals it was excellent. I mean, the level
Mhm.
of like,
I
and you
know.
realize they have become famous writing about each
Each
other,
other.
and nobody knew.
Yes.
Nobody
Nobody
connected
knew.
it.
These
Yeah.
two
Mhm.
amazingly famous people and amazingly famous characters they have created, and no one put two and two together. And they've even, did you not love the fact that they've even created a backstory? Oh, yeah, we were together at this writing retreat in London. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I believed them until I didn't, until I knew better not to.
Oh
Mhm.
my gosh. I'll just say this. When she said, so the hero, he tries to broach the subject of why they're not together, like this distance, these 15 years between them. And she says, not here. because everybody's still watching.
Mm-hmm.
And aren't we
And
Mm-hmm.
like
putting two and
that?
two together. Like
It's like,
suddenly,
Yes.
like you see the magic appear in the room and you're like,
yes,
It was
oh,
his eyes,
what?
because that was the
The
first thing
eyes.
somebody
he
said.
noticed that
The
he
They
has the
eyes.
noticed
master's
his
eyes.
eyes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, her character's
Yes.
eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
she
Yes.
said, not here. And then, and when she tells him, and I'm not going to linger on it because I know we run out of time already. But when she says stop writing about me, he says I'm writing
To
to
you.
you.
Yes.
He wrote his books as if no one would read them but her.
But her. Mm-hmm.
But her,
Mm-hmm.
y'all. I'm like,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
melting inside for Shane Hall. I'm like, please
Mm-hmm.
let him exist
And wait,
because
he says it. What else does he say to her?
he says, because I'm saying to you what I could never
Never
say
say.
in person through my
Mm-hmm.
stories. And so you find out on stage that these two have literally ingested one another's books. They've
Mm-hmm.
consumed them. He knows
Mm-hmm.
her characters inside
Inside
out.
and mm-hmm.
And
Because he
she
can
knows a
psychoanalyze them. Mm-hmm.
yes,
Doesn't
and
he
it's
say to her that she has something
so
about she's
beautiful.
made him a legend? And he said, you're a legend because you write about
Love
me.
me.
I'm
Because
like,
you
oh
write
my
about
God.
me.
Like,
I
Mm-hmm.
holy
love it.
smokes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
So we
woo.
have to jump forward, y'all.
Yes, we do, unfortunately.
So let's go to after they meet as adults, we find out about how they met as young people. And
That
this
was a
happened in
tough read.
DC, ho,
Yes,
a
this
city
is
I
straight up
love,
out of DC. They
straight
were
out of
living in
DC.
DC at the
And
time.
they're both
Yes,
hurting. They're both
yes,
hurting. And it's the hurt.
Physically,
Yeah. And
yes,
they physically, but not just physically, but mentally too.
yes.
emotionally,
Yeah.
mentally, like,
So
Yeah. So to me, that right there just set the stage for their connection,
mhm,
and why their relationship just is, to me, beautiful.
yeah. Yeah, their relationship is beautiful. So it's interesting how they met, y'all. And it's actually in the heroine's hands. So
mhm.
Genevieve, who's also Ava Mercy, makes the decision that she wants a friend. So
When she is, well,
17.
17 years
17, 17,
old,
17, 17.
17.
I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah,
mixing
she's
it up with
17,
Audrey.
17. But that
17
just
and a
goes
new
to
school.
show, but that just goes to show what her life was like if
Like
at
She
the
gonna
age
make a
of
friend.
17.
17 you're just now making friends.
Yeah.
Yes. Or wanting them.
It's
Exactly.
new kid syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or wanting them. So she's at her new school, y'all, and it sounds like inner city DC. I'ma just say
Don't
that.
be
Just
judgmental.
no, I'm not. But the way these kids was acting in school and what happened
Ooh,
to her on that first day,
on the
Yeah.
first day.
yeah. So she meets Shane, and I should say she approaches him because he's the kid that's all alone. Like literally, she's outside and she's looking for someone to approach.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he is a 17-year-old African American male with a book in his hand. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you very much.
Not any book,
Yes,
not
yes.
in a
He
Baldwin book.
Baldwin. He
He
was
reading
reading
James
Baldwin,
Bowen.
a
Mm-hmm.
book he'd read 14 times. I'll just
Mm-hmm.
say that. So he's well read. And he has a cast on his arm. He's already bruised. He got a cut on his nose. He's sitting on
Busted
the
up.
bleachers by
Mm-hmm.
himself. As she walks up and the bleachers, and she starts talking, he has nothing to say.
He like, go away, girl.
Yes,
But wait,
please.
wait, wait, back up. She notices his eyes and that his pupils are dilated.
Yes, she does.
She's
And the reason
very astute.
Yes,
she
yes.
is very astute.
Mm-hmm.
And she literally, and she's that girl who's seen so much of life. She asking, what is it, ketamine, what is it, like she wants to know.
Yeah.
She can name the drugs, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because she has some history herself.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that moment, guess what, they end up in the same class together, and the first day of class is so very concerning
Mm-hmm.
that it
Yes.
actually hurt to watch that play out. But anyway, the first day in class did not go well for her. She was very much targeted, like so many new kids are bullied, and it
Mm-hmm.
is bullying.
Mm-hmm.
And she
Straight up
would,
bullying. It's assault.
it's assault.
Yes.
Yes, she was, yes, it's assault.
And the
And
teacher leave.
And the teacher leaves. I'm going to get the principal, and leaves these
He like, I don't want no
unruly
part of this.
students and
He
the
roll
new
out.
girl there.
Yeah.
And her and Shane end up having to defend themselves, and both of them end up unconscious
In the prison, in the
and
hospital,
in the
mhm,
hospital. In
and
the
waiting for
hospital.
an adult to come
come, yes.
And how
who
did you
doesn't
feel
seem to be
about that?
coming.
Hey, Lisa, it's good to see you. So, how did you feel about that? Because this is one of the issues I want to tackle when you talk about familiar trauma and abandonment. But you have two 17-year-olds who have gotten injured at school. They're there with a guidance counselor who's smoking her, I want to say like 37 cigarette, waiting on the parents to show up. And nobody shows up.
No, no.
That, to me, that just showed how much Shane and Genevieve had to parent themselves
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
shows
because they
itself
didn't
in
have
the
any,
future.
right. If they didn't have that parental relationship, well, we know
Mm-hmm.
with Shane, he was a foster student, a foster
Foster
child,
child.
Mm-hmm.
living in a group home, not even in a foster home, but in a group home. And to me,
And nobody came to pick him up.
nobody coming to get this
Yeah.
child
Just don't
at a
care.
group home. Okay, this is a state run group home.
Yeah.
How is
Right.
it that no adult was available?
Mm-hmm.
That makes me really question the stability of that group home. What,
Right. Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes. This is
because
where.
we already knew Lizette. We she slept during the day and worked at night. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still
Yeah.
got some issues with Lizette. Like
Yes.
I'm amazed. Like this character has woven stories for her 12-year-old daughter, who's actually a 32-year-old woman. In my mind, this child is so advanced that she's having therapy sessions with friends. And
Right.
I can't disavow the information that she gives. That's
Yes.
my big problem. I cannot disavow the level of therapy that she is providing because
Mm-hmm.
the information is really good. I'm like, I might need a therapist like this too. But you see the version of Eva who is left with no parent showing up, this Lizette for a mother. And then in the future, we see that she has a 12-year-old daughter who is an adult in every sense of the word, except for the fact that she's 12 years old and has some of a 12-year-old's
Right.
insecurities. She
Yeah.
is so much she's so much born out of the fact that if you have a mother who is not an adult, you create a child that can fend for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
which
I
is
agree.
serious.
It is. I think we see as we watch Genevieve's journey with her
Hmm.
mother Lisette, you can see early on this childlike wonder listening to her mom's stories, which
Hmm.
sound larger than life, especially
And
mhm,
they are
with Lisette being so physically beautiful
beautiful.
mhm,
and having the attention of all these men who
Hmm.
have means. But as the years go by, the glamour of that, the
Hmm.
lie, starts to wear off.
Yep.
And you can also see that, like, that divide of the child growing up to understand what it is her mom is really doing. You can see that manifest in Genevieve as a teenager. So
Hmm.
we have a teenager who, like Jackie said, this book does deal with self mutilation,
Yeah.
between the hero, with the hero and the heroine. I'll just put that out there.
mhm,
Yeah.
So, and
Without
that's,
giving too much away.
yes,
mhm.
and we already talked about the drugs that's going on. And then something tragic happens because these two elect not to go home when nobody comes. You know what? They find solace in one another,
Mhm.
and they elect not to go home. And that ties back to our title of
Of
Seven
7 days
Days in
in
June.
June.
Mhm.
And at the end of that 7 days, because we have to jump forward, he's
He's
gone.
gone.
She doesn't know what happened.
Mhm.
And then we jump forward into adulthood,
Hmm.
basically. And it's 15 years later, and here comes Shane, ready to explain. And
Hmm.
I have to ask you, did you want to hear his explanation, or were
Yes.
were you still as just upset and
You
as
know what?
hurt as
I
she
I
was?
was not angry at him.
Okay.
I was more like I mean, just getting to know him and the way that he acted on the day they met, I'm like,
Yeah.
something happened. And I
Yeah.
wanted to know what it was.
Yeah.
I wanted to know like if he himself was hurt and could not, something had to have happened because he made this promise. And, he's big on promises. We know
Yes,
Yes.
that
he
when we
He
is.
first
keeps
meet
his
him. So
promises.
he's
Yes.
big on keeping his promise.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So he promised her that he would not leave her.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
something that right there told me that something happened, something big happened for
Yes.
him to just disappear from her life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Me too.
it was not something he could control
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
because,
Hmm.
being big on keeping his promise, his word, it's almost like um, the way we put emphasis on keeping your promises. That was important to him.
Yes, he
Yeah.
would have been the man
Yeah.
to keep his promise. I also
Exactly.
wondered because in that 7 days that they were together, and I can tell you they just the little glimpse that we saw of them as two 17
So
year olds
intense.
Mm-hmm.
clinging to each other, it was so intense.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, when he wasn't there, I was like, "Where's Shane?" And I was I was surprised that she reinvented herself and did not look
For him.
for him. I was.
Mm-mm, I was
I
not.
I was
I
a little
was.
hurt.
I was
I
not
was only
surprised.
because when and I forget the character's name, the owner, the daughter of the owner of the house, the friend,
Uh-huh.
when she came in and she saw how they were sleeping, she described it as if they were anchored, that they were each
Hmm.
other's anchor, the way
Anchor.
they were
Hmm.
holding on to each other. So the fact that Genevieve just so easily believed
Mhm.
that he would disappear like that and not even try and look for him, that hurt me,
It did. It hurt
and
me too.
I'm surprised Shane wasn't hurt by it either.
Yeah.
And that was one of my questions that I wrote down, like, why wasn't he as angry at her as she is at him,
Oh, that's a
for
great
not
question.
looking for him
That's
after
a
all
great
that he
question.
went through in those 7 days, all the
Hmm.
promises he made.
Hmm.
Uh-oh.
Why didn't she look for him? Why
Mm-mm,
isn't he
hmm.
angry at her or with her?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
felt like because I thought about that and I thought it went back to Shane's childhood because he's probably the most emotional black man that I've seen on page. I
Hmm.
mean empathetic, not that he shows it on his face, but as
Right.
far as being empathetic and connecting with people. And you see it with Ty, you see how passionate he is about the young people he connects with, and you see how he's very methodical
Hmm.
and he feels so guilty when he lets people down
Mm.
that
Mhm.
I think he expects that type of situation. Like if I let somebody down, they'll reject me forever. Like there's no opening for me to come back.
Yeah.
And so I think even when he comes back to explain, he's not expecting as much as he got. He's really not.
Mhm.
And I think, and I know we're running out of time, but I think as those 7 days now in Brooklyn play out and life takes another turn, it's almost like Shane doesn't expect good things to happen when he's happy.
Mm.
Mhm.
When
Mm.
he's
Yeah.
happy, he expects it to be short lived.
Mhm.
Right, because he
Eh,
even shows up saying that he only coming for one. He's coming to New York for one reason. He's gonna go. He has unfinished business. At which point, I wrote in my notes, "I'm never okay when a man says that he has unfinished business with a woman." But he
mhm.
pretty much comes in saying he's got unfinished business. He is planning to talk to her, and then he's planning to leave and find
Yeah.
wherever his next place is. And that level of of short-term living. I mean, this is a short-term living man. He's lived all over the world. I mean,
Yes,
He lives
literally
a
all over the world. And
he
so,
lives a nomadic life.
yeah,
he
he's a
does.
nomad.
Yes.
He has never found his place, and that is almost his place. The fact that he's
Yes,
never
Mm-hmm.
found his place. At least
to
that's what
keep
he's
moving.
created
Mm-hmm.
for himself. And so what I will tell you shocked me, and I hope it's not really a spoiler, but the moment when the two of them spend the day together and what happens, and then
Yes,
she's the one that says, I leave. I
Mm-hmm.
leave first.
that
Ex-husband,
didn't
Mm-hmm.
shock
lovers.
me.
I was like, oh wow, she rolled out left.
That did not shock me. You know
Okay.
why? I'm gonna tell you why that didn't shock me. Because this is a child who grew up in a home where men left her mother over
All the
and
Over
time.
and
over and
over.
over again.
Mm-hmm.
They were always left holding the bag.
And
Mhm.
And
so far for her, I'm sorry, didn't mean to
y-
cut you off, but so
y-
far for her,
yes,
it happened to her.
The
yes,
Shane
both of
left
them,
her,
and then
and
her
then her
husband.
husband left her.
left her.
Yeah,
Yes,
Well,
and
yeah.
he emotionally left her. She released him physically.
Right,
Yes.
because he was not
he
able
needed to
to
go.
handle her situation. They were
Yeah.
kids. I mean, think about it. She was a kid when she got married.
Mhm.
I
So,
And that
get
was
that.
another one of my questions too. Like, okay, she has this, this disability.
mhm,
And even though when they were together and she had sleepovers with her husband, she did not have these same, you know, episodes in the time that in the
She
6 weeks that
did.
they knew each other. So
She
he
did.
did not know what he was getting himself into before they got married.
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you get the feeling, and I mean, if she's the typical person with chronic illness, those of us with chronic illnesses understand that we become
You
different
play a
versions of
role.
ourselves. Oh yeah, like I've told people all the time, where you suddenly have a pain and you say, "Oh my goodness, I need to go check on something. I'll be right back." And as soon as you're out of sight, you run for a
Yes.
safe space, like physically
Yes.
run. You see somebody with like coming around the corner, and you like stop, become normal, and continue on your way until they're gone, and
Yes.
then you're running again because you need to find a safe space to deal with your pain. And so
Yes.
that part I understood,
Me too.
that whole sense of being a whole different person, and especially for new people, because you want them to like you and you don't want them to see your illness, so you almost hide this thing that you know is going to rear its ugly head regularly, but you don't let them see it. And I completely understood what she was going through, because I'd been there at that age and I got it. Like I was like, yeah,
Yes.
she's hiding, she's
But when
Yes.
she
pretending.
met but when she met Shane, she did not hide it.
Because he was
No,
broken
he was
too.
broken too.
He was
Well, she
broken too.
didn't know
Very
that
broken.
in
Oh
the
girl,
very beginning.
yes
Girl,
he
he was
did.
all bookered
He
up.
broke it
He
up.
got a
Well, yeah,
camera
I
on his
mean,
arm. He got
well,
knots on his
but she
head. He
didn't know
got a,
that was just the
and he was
physical.
fine. I
But
mean,
that
And
was
his
the
eyes were dilated. She
physical.
knew.
That was
You
the
don't drug yourself for
physical
peace. You drug
broken.
yourself for pain.
no, he was
She
bookered
didn't
up.
learn about the emotional broken part of Shane until a little later on. But
No, no, no.
The same day,
So
first
she
day,
learned in the
day
same
one.
hour. Remember
Yeah.
this, Jackie, when she asked about his arm and he said, I broke it myself. And she said, you're trying to scare me.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
okay,
That
okay,
happened
Mm-hmm.
like
okay.
Mm-hmm.
right in that moment on the
Yeah.
bleachers. And
Yep.
then she found out he was telling the truth. He broke
Yeah.
Okay.
himself. So she
Okay.
knew he was just as broken. And I think the interesting thing is, as crazy as these two teenagers are, and I'll tell you, as the mother of a girl, I do not want my child to meet Shane. I'm telling you, I like him in the
Not
book,
when he was
Mhm.
17, I
17, but
wouldn't
I do
have.
not
Not
want my
no.
child to meet him.
No.
But it's interesting that Shane looked at her and said, she's more broken than I am. Like literally, her demons
Mhm.
are bigger than mine.
Mm.
And he has this need to help. He
Mhm.
has it. You even see it when they stealing and giving stuff back to the other kids in the
And
in the
Oh my
home.
God. That scene was so like, holy smokes. I wasn't expecting that. Like, whoa, this says so much about who this young man is
Man
in this
is
broken
Mhm.
moment.
he
But I
wants
mean, I
to
know we don't have
save.
a lot of time, but I wanted to talk to you guys about one part that she kind of like, she doesn't gloss over it, but she draws it in and so seams it in. This relationship is the main point of the book, but somehow Tia Williams has found a way to talk about the state of Black publishing. And I think that we would do ourselves a disservice if we didn't
Yeah.
spend a couple of minutes on it. And the fact that, and Now, mind you, on this date, at this time, I will tell you that 90% of the books that I have read this year have been Black books that came out in the last 6 months. That is
Mhm.
Mhm.
saying a lot
A lot.
Mhm.
because, and I mean, my goal for this year has been is to read a lot of books about not just Black people, but Black people of Caribbean descent, like my family, because I want to see myself in more stories. And for the first time ever, I feel like there are these stories to tell. So I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about her statement in the book about the fact that the publishing struggles for people of color are often that it is easier to sell pain than it is to sell, joy. And does this book feed into the same thing that she's claiming is the issue?
So that is a very interesting question.
Yes.
And I'm going to take it a step further and say, in the book, you also see where our heroine has sold her book with a Black hero and Black heroine, and
Mhm.
She's
she
written the
sold them.
script.
And
Yeah.
wrote the script.
So it's
Mhm.
getting ready for television, right?
Movie. I think they want
For
to
Movie.
a
make a movie.
movie,
Movie.
and they
Mhm.
And
want to
she
make.
needs this
They
to
bought a
happen.
black book to make the characters white.
White.
It's like,
And it was a woman
oh,
of color that was going to direct that said, you need white characters. And that
you
threw
need
me
white
even
characters. You buy a
further.
black book,
You needed white
an
characters.
author
Yeah.
featuring characters of color. So paranormal characters of color. And she's like, well, it can't be both. You can't be niche and paranormal and then niche and black as well. Like that's just too much. She's like, you don't want a black movie, you want a big
It,
movie, like a best-selling movie. So you
Yeah.
can't have
Yeah.
all of that going on.
Yeah.
But I think where Tia does a great job is she shows you different aspects of the black experience. And I think this is
Mm-hmm.
where this book is divergent from monetizing black pain, black suffering, because
mhm.
you see very affluent
Girl.
um, yeah, very affluent black Americans in this book. And then you also look back at the progression. If you look at Shane and Ava's story, where
Mm-hmm.
they started, in very urban settings, like they're at this
Mhm.
inner city school in DC, where kids, like there's one kid sleeping on the floor, four of them sleeping in the chair, one of them's, like they're, profane language. So
Mm-hmm.
this very kind of stereotypical urban setting,
Mm-hmm.
and then she juxtaposed that with what you see in Brooklyn, where Cece is married to a black plastic surgeon, and then
Mhm.
you talk about the black literati and how they're living and these catered parties and stuff that they're having.
That happened at
So
the last minute.
yes,
Mhm.
so
Yes,
I
Mhm.
that she could
feel
do that at
like
the last minute.
yes.
And
So I
people
feel
still show
like
up. Mhm.
yes, I feel like the book like ran the gamut when you talk about different experiences, not focusing on one segment, one story
Yeah.
that is so often told through, kind of a European lens looking at Black America or the
Mhm.
Black experience. So I do not feel like this book did that.
Okay, because I was like, gosh, like
That's
afterwards I
my
was
take.
thinking,
I don't
wait,
know. Jackie
Yeah.
may feel
am I
different.
feeding
No, I
into
feel the
that
same way.
too?
No, I felt like, yeah, there was pain, but that pain was no different from any other story that wasn't
Yeah.
black.
Yes.
It did not center on how well written this book was,
Which
or
is
how it
fabulously well
celebrated black
written.
life. You know,
And black
it
language as well.
magnified,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
yes, it magnified the black
Mm-hmm.
life, and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that
Mm-hmm.
not all inner city children, all inner city black children
Mhm.
stay in that environment.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. And
Hmm.
yes, even if they're in a toxic situation, it
But
does not mean
right.
they don't have the skill set to rise above,
And
right?
also too, for
The
me,
people who sow into
even
them.
that stigma of foster children, you
Single
know,
parenthood too.
single parenthood too, yeah, that is you
Mm-hmm.
just become the statistic.
Exactly.
And so if anything, I think Tia did a good job of showing how you are not always the statistic. That is not always the black story
Yes, you can
for,
reinvent.
yes, but not just but
They,
reinvent,
they,
but
yeah.
still hold on to that life. But that life has taught you so much that you've grown.
Yes, you
You
Mm-hmm.
grow.
grow.
That's a
You do
better.
not
Yes.
stay, yeah, you do not stay rooted
Hmm.
in that um one area of your life. You grow.
Yeah.
Yes. Now
Yeah.
I have a final question I'm going to ask. Maybe I got one.
Let's go.
So
We going over,
okay,
Coach.
all
We're
right. We're
going
gonna go
over
over a little
today.
bit, y'all. A
Stick
little bit.
with us.
Forgive us.
We're going
But
over.
there,
We need
but there's
to.
so many themes in this book that I want to address. So we talked about the reinvention
Mm-hmm.
because they both did it. Like they
Mm-hmm.
totally
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from this past. This is like two people who sprang forward as adults and their
Mm-hmm.
childhood got erased. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they didn't allow anybody to drag them back there. We talked about the addiction. We talked about the disability. But I also want to talk about Ava's decision to hide her family history from her daughter. And if you thought it was
Woo!
the right one. So I
Ah,
already told you all about Lizette and Lizette. And so she made her mom out to be a feminist. What was grandma? What did she say Lizette was? Anyway, she was a feminist revolutionary. I mean,
some
and
business
and and not a
entrepreneur, the whole
paramour.
lot.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so like Lizette, who used to tell her daughters these vivid tales of
Mm-hmm.
her
Mm-hmm.
time with all these men, Ava has she's a storyteller as well. Her mom was a storyteller. Um, but she has created
Mm-hmm.
a world for her daughter where she feels like her daughter can soar,
Yes.
right? Like she doesn't have to be bound by what her mother knows about the women in her family, some of them who could actually pass
Mm-hmm.
as European or
Yeah.
French or Italian or whatever. They're fair enough
Yeah.
that they could pass. So what was your thought about Eva deciding not to tell Audrey the truth about her past, and then the blow up that they had at school when her daughter confronts her about what she doesn't know about her life, her mom's life? Jackie?
Okay. Okay. Um, I was a little disappointed in the
Mm.
fact that, yeah, in the fact that Genevieve or Ava did not really tell her daughter about her past. But also to her credit, she did not know everything about her own past, like
Mm.
her grandmother and her own great grandmother.
She wants to know.
um so even the story behind the ring,
Yes.
that ring, and her daughter, when she goes to school and sees that her daughter is wearing that ring, to me that should have been an opening. Like, hey, okay, let me just kind of tell you a little bit the truth about your own grandmother. Now, yeah, we as single mothers, and not just single mothers but mothers period, we give so much to our children. We put so many of our wants and needs to the side just so that our children can have. And the fact that it took this one incident for Ava to blow up, I was a little disappointed in how that played out. To me, it should not have happened there at school, a
Mhm.
place where, although her daughter is 12, she's still well known herself. Um, I do believe in setting boundaries for children, and boundaries were not set for Audrey. And
Mhm.
that's why Audrey, that whole incident at the school happened
Mm.
because boundaries were not set with
Mhm.
Soon
children.
enough.
Exactly. And to me it was, I'm not going to say they were set a little too late, because it's never too late to set boundaries, but the way that it played out I was a little disappointed, and I guess because I'm used to so much of my own family history has been ingrained in me from childhood. I didn't see that as normal for someone else, but that's just my own, family experience. The
Mm-hmm.
good, the bad, the ugly, I still knew something about my family history because
Yeah.
it was very important to our family.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Michelle.
so I feel slightly differently. I know I'm going to
Okay.
shock y'all by saying I feel slightly differently. I mean,
Uh-huh.
there are a lot of things that I learned about my own family history and people that I thought I knew their whole stories when I was an adult, like in my 40s, like
Mm-hmm.
before my mom passed away, there were things that we finally talked about where I asked questions about things that were never spoken of. Like you'd hear little snippets as a kid. I think I understand. I understand a great deal about why she chose to create that version of her mother for her daughter. My mother created a version of her father for me. This is a man that I would never know as an adult. I barely knew as a child after the age of 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not know him in order to create have a bad idea of who he was. And she kept a version of him to herself because she loved her daddy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think I said to Sierra yesterday, I cannot believe that Lizette is allowed to work with children because if I knew her history, I wouldn't let her near a child with a 10-foot pole across the street with a stick between us. Because I don't believe that she understands the true meaning behind safety of children. Lizette, I think even it describes herself as being too pretty to have to care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't fault Ava for creating a version of her mother for her daughter because I do believe that on certain lines, children need to be protected. This is a child living with just a mother in a city that can very much raise your children and grow them up because of the things they can accidentally see. And while you do need to make them tough in that surrounding, I think it's also safe and fair to want to keep a little bit of childhood. This is a child who acts extremely grown. And
Mm-hmm.
so to keep that relationship, because she has to see this grandmother, to keep that relationship between her daughter Audrey and her mother Lizette, I understand not giving her daughter full reign on Lizette's history. Because honestly, a mother like Lizette should have probably been put behind bars for a little while. It might have fixed her wagon wheel just a little bit. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand why she is protective under the same case. It makes me think about all of those cases. I have several friends who've worked as either guidance counselors or social workers in the New York City system, and they will tell you that a child who is removed from a home for abuse will cry for days for the parent that abused them. And so, in a weird way, it feels like that adult level of I have to protect her from what other people will think of her because they don't understand. So, on that level, I do understand why she has created this entire version. First of all, she comes from a history of women who create versions of themselves. And sometimes when the version of someone is really tough and you have to look it in the face, you kind of feel like this need to protect them because the rest of the world just doesn't understand. So I kind of understand her in that way. I agree with you, but I understand why she wouldn't, and I don't fault her for it.
Okay. All right. So in closing, so this is a romance. I will say that in
And it's a
all,
beautiful romance
and
with
it
all
is
the
very
pieces
sensual.
put
If
in.
you like sensual romance, that's a slow burn. But you get a lot of emotion from the male character and the hero. I mean, and the heroine. You will get that in this book. So if that's the type of romance you like, you will get this and so much more in this book.
Mhm.
But for me, and I'm just going to say this in closing, as much as I loved it, there was something about the romance that was kind of missing. And I think it's because I felt like it we learned so much about these characters, but I know because of their backstory and their internal dialogue how they feel, but you don't see them as much physically together on the page. You just know
Mhm.
what their thoughts are and how they feel when they do come back
Which gives
together.
it the literary romance.
You're right.
Mhm.
So that is the piece, like from the kind of traditional romance elements where you kind of lock the hero and the heroine together that you don't see as much in this story. Jackie?
Mhm. Well, I at the closing, I was like, okay, I know they're not getting their HEA right now. They're happily ever after, but are
HFN.
are they even happy for now? You know,
Yeah.
I didn't get that type of closing. So, I was left with a little question, a few little questions like, okay, this is how it ends, but what's next? Where, you know, is it one, the other? I don't know. But I do love the story so much so that I was on my third round of listening this morning because each time I listened, I learned something new.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And I
yes,
just
yes.
don't feel like I learned everything there was to learn about these characters.
I get that. I
And
felt the
so,
same way.
yeah, and so
Mm.
that's why, I'm like, okay, until I feel like I have learned everything, I'm probably going to listen to it a couple more times.
Right. Can I ask one more question, Michelle? All right. She's smiling. That means I'm going over y'all. So, as far as the character 8, what did you think 8 symbolized in the book or the story? So, Shane's story, the heroine in his story was 8. Her name was 8. So, for you, what did that symbolize or mean in the story? Or did you get any connection since this you're on your third round of listening to it?
Yeah, I want to hear the answer to this because I won't lie. I racked my brain. I searched the internet and I'm still without an answer.
I I I don't know because they were together. At first I was like, okay, well, were they really together for 8 days and not 7? You I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I
I
I
thought
I
about
cannot answer.
infinity. That
Yeah,
came
the
up for me after
infinity
we talked about it. The whole idea that the infinity of two people who are forever, no matter where they are, finding each
Connected.
other. Like the
Connected.
fact that her character, what every time they make love, they wake up on the opposite side of the world and they're constantly looking for each other. And it kind of like, that whole infinity of a forever search,
Mhm.
forever needing this person. That came to mind, but honestly, I could not find like I feel very like if the answer is there, I feel very much left out, and I'll find out maybe in June when I read it again because this book was released in June, named in June, so I want to read it in June. Coming
Yes.
again, my second reading I'm saving for this summer, somewhere warm.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
so if you're out there and you're listening to this podcast, if you find the answer, the connection between Shane titling his book 8 and the connection to anything in this story, please come to the Women on Words page where we also want you to follow us and tell us, please,
yes.
what's
Or
the
Tia.
significance of 8?
Or Tia Williams, if you're out there and
Yes.
you're listening, please
Please.
Yes.
let us
Let us
know.
We
know.
sorry we missed it. Please tell us.
Please
I
tell
need a
Yeah.
us.
I need a clue.
We
Yeah.
tried.
Or
We
tell us
tried.
where to find it. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like your
But
baby said, at least we tried. So
Yeah.
any closing thoughts, Michelle, before we finish out?
Um,
And I'm gonna
so
put up our
I'm
book for
really
next month.
I'm really glad we read this together. I had I bought this book in hardcover in June of last year when it was released and had been waiting to read it. Wanted to read it in June and then said, "Oh, I missed June." And I kept hearing and I'm going to tell you I kept hearing podcasts that for non-black books talking about this book and the stirring that this book caused for
Yes.
so many people, and I have been jealous of those who have read it first. I'm so glad we got to take part in this experience again. I'm very curious to go back and read some of her work. We talked about the fact that this book felt very much like you could tell she writes YA because she wrapped a
Yes.
YA story into an adult story.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm really grateful that we read it. I thought that the writing was sharp. It was
Mhm.
beautiful. This has made me, as I said, want to have a master's in creative
I'm a
writing. It has also
jealous.
turned me into a book darter and it almost turned me into a highlighter, but I'm not crazy and this is a book. Um, but it asks so many questions that I'm probably going to be thinking about for a very long time. And
Mhm.
it makes you look at the significance that a young adult relationship can have on an adult, because we so often tell children they do not understand love. And I think that even as a non-parent, I find myself questioning that
Yeah.
now. So, yes, this book was very beautiful. I am all in reading it again. I cannot wait. Like Jackie has found what this book means. I can't wait to find out what else this book has to offer on a second reading. And I'm really glad I finally got a chance to pick it up.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So, thank you all for joining us and spending your Sunday with us. So, next month we're reading This Close to Okay by Lisa Cross Smith. This close to okay, like this close to okay by Lisa Cross Smith. So y'all join us next month, March the third Sunday of the month at 3 p.m. for Women on Words. So until then, be amazing, be wild. Thank you all, ladies, for another wonderful conversation about life, love, and literature. Black literati.
Yes, Black literati.
Black literati. Y'all remember that. All right. Bye now.
Yeah.